Okay, life of Jesus. What do you know about the life of Jesus? Well, you can read the New Testament, and apparently in the New Testament, Jesus died on a cross. You have a whole detailed account carrying the cross, what he said on the cross. You could also look at the Talmud, and the Talmud says Jesus was stoned to death by a biblical court. So, people today will tell you, that's a different Jesus. The one in the Talmud is maybe even one of many Jesuses. I mean, to me, that's a stretch. How many guys were called Yeshu Hanoitzri, Jesus the Nazarite, or Jesus the Christian? I'm saying, I find that a big stretch, and I think people just say that because they don't want the heat of Christians blaming the Jews for saying nasty or what they think is nasty stuff about Jesus. So they're like, oh, it's not even Jesus, it's someone else. It's a different Jesus of Nazarene, I think that's a cop-out on a stretch. One thing they want to say is that in the Talmud, Jesus is put together with the King Yanai, who was 100 years earlier than the Christian Jesus, and that's like a big proof that it's not the same Jesus. I don't know the timelines. I don't know if there's any standing on that. But we definitely have what to address here, right? Like, which historical accounting is accurate and factual. So, I mean, if you're a Christian, I hear why you would disregard the Talmud and just say the Talmud is, Jesus hated the rabbis of the Talmud anyway, and blah, 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 which, okay, as a Christian, I'm saying you don't accept the oral law anyway, probably. So it's very easy for you to say that. But as a Jew who respects the Talmud as I respect the written Bible, I believe there are two parts, the written and the oral, were both given at Sinai. People have a hard time understanding how a compilation of discussions by sages could have been given at Sinai. So what exactly was given at Sinai probably developed into a lengthy discussion as a format of the Talmud, formatted in the Talmud, right? But as a Jew, the Talmud is my primary source sheet, my primary factual facts, okay? So when I want to know what happened with Jesus, I look at the Talmud. If I want to read the New Testament and see what they say about Jesus, I would take all that with a grain of salt. Meaning, if anyone was stretching the story or changing the story to fit their narrative, I don't accept that the sages of the Talmud would have done something like that. And it's not so hard for me to accept that that's what happened, whether on purpose or by mistake, with the narrative of Jesus. I don't hold the authors of the New Testament with any type of esteem that I hold the authors of the Talmud with. So that's my introduction to all this, so that we could all be on the same page. If you're on a different page, that's fine. Just you're coming at it from a different view, not a Jewish view. You're coming at it from a Christian view, which a Jew will never accept because it makes no sense. It makes sense to you because you never had another picture. We have another picture that we look at. I'm saying you can't expect a serious Jew who studied Talmud in a serious setting to take you seriously if you're going to attack the Talmud, if you're not going to take the Talmud as factual, as holy, as divinely inspired. So that's how we have to begin the conversation, okay? And I don't have to fit into the Christian Bible. I'm saying, to me, the Christian Bible is an invention, maybe for good, maybe for bad, we can discuss it. But the Christian Bible is an invention by people. Doesn't have, to me, any. I'm not beholden to believe what's written in there, and I don't have to make it fit with my narrative. If we can make it fit, which we probably could, all the better. So what happened with Jesus, as far as I know, I'm saying there's many passages that talk about, not many, there's a few passages that talk about Jesus. You have in the Jerusalem Talmud, you have the Babylonian Talmud, which were, one was written in Babylon, one was written in Jerusalem around the same time, based on the same Mishnah. Right, the Talmud's a expounding of the Mishnah, which is written in very coded form. Like the Mishnah will say a statement, which is not law. You can't open up a Mishnah and find law in there because you'll see that the law often doesn't reflect the exact wording of the Mishnah. The Mishnah will say stuff with a missing word, with a missing letter, say something that doesn't make sense, and then the Talmud will come to understand what it really meant And why did it do that? Because it was a short form. It wasn't meant to be this whole long form that gives you all the details. It was short form coding that you can just repeat orally. You just repeat the Mishnah. The Mishnah literally means to repeat. So the Mishnah was meant as like a short paragraph. You can just repeat oral law. You just repeat the paragraph, and it's like not telling you anything, but it's when you meditate on those words, all the expounded concepts that later came into the Talmud were encoded in that, and you were supposed to know all of that. But how do you remember it? So it's like a mnemonic. A mnemonic doesn't mean anything. Like if I say PEMDAS, whatever, right? Parentheses, exponents, whatever, PEMDAS. Does PEMDAS mean anything? No, it's a mnemonic that contains more information. The way of containing all that information is in this mnemonic. So similarly, all the information of the Talmud was contained in the mnemonic that we call Mishnah. And there's many Mishnahs. And Mishnah is pretty big. There's 6 orders of Mishnah. In each order, you have many tractates. Within each tractate, multiple chapters. In each chapter, you have multiple Mishnahs. So a Mishnah was a short form, concise mnemonic to contain all the oral law, okay? Before the Mishnah was written down, I don't know if they were repeating the same Mishnayot, the same Mishnahs orally, or how exactly the format was. But there was, between teacher and student, a whole lot of oral law that eventually became compiled into the Mishnah, which Rabbi Yehuda the Prince, went around to all the sages, collected all their oral teachings and wrote them down, and that's the Mishnah. Like I said, the Mishnah, you can't read the Mishnah and know what the law is because it's so encoded. So that's what the Talmud is doing. The Talmud goes through every Mishnah line by line and discusses it in the format of free thought. This leads to this, leads to this, leads to this, and Anyway, so what does the Talmud say about Jesus? So yeah, in the Jerusalem Talmud and Babylon Talmud, it talks about Jesus. There's also other places like Tosefta or whatever, which is stuff that didn't make it into the Talmud. I think that's what Tosefta is. There might be other places. I don't know where else, but we definitely have teachings of Jesus. So one story, I'm trying to go through all of them, but one story that I went through so far is the accounting of, Jesus and his teacher. Jesus and his teacher at the time of King Yanai ran away because King Yanai was trying to kill all the sages. Someone sends a message to them to come back from Egypt. They were in Alexandria in Egypt. Come back. On their way in, they stop at an inn. The teacher makes a comment. Jesus misinterprets it, thinks he's talking about the lady. He was talking about the inn, something like that. He says her eyes are narrow. The teacher rebukes Jesus with many shofars. Jesus comes back many times to get back into the circle, make his, we want to settle this, let me back. Eventually, the teacher was going to let him back, but the teacher was in the middle of the Shema, which you can't interrupt for anything. He made a hand motion to wait for him. Give me a minute. Jesus misinterpreted it, went out, took a stone, erected the stone, and bowed down to it and started worshiping it, avodah zarah, idolatry. He purposely stood up the stone. You can worship a stone without standing it up. He stood it up on purpose because he wanted others to follow him. He wanted to take other Jews to idolatry. Okay, that's one narrative that I've gone through. The other one is Onkelos, who was a convert to Judaism, I think from Rome, I believe. He raised up Bilam. He raised up someone else, one of our persecutors. I don't know if it was Nebuchadnezzar or someone like that type of character. And he raised up Jesus, and he asked Jesus, some questions about who's valuable in the next world. And Jesus says, the Jews. He said, what should I do with them? Should I, I don't know, or something. And Onkelos is asking Jesus, about the Jews, what should he, connect to the Jews? And Jesus said something be good to them and don't hurt them, and that'll be good for you, because, if you're good to them, God will be good with you. If you're bad to them, God's going to punish you, like that, his apple of his eye, or something like that. That's more or less the story. And there's other stories. I haven't gone through them yet. There's stories of, supposedly of, I don't know if it mentions him by name as Jesus, but the commentaries have understood that it was Jesus that it was talking about. Maybe it's argued about, but definitely there's a big room to say that they're talking about Jesus. These other stories of a dude that came back from Egypt with with magic, black magic or whatever. He aimed something about engraving it in his skin. I don't know. I didn't read it yet, so I don't know. But he engraved the magic in his skin somehow, and he was able to do magic, sorcery, which would tell me if that's the same case, same story. I mean, was it the same trip to Egypt, or did he go back to Egypt? Because if it was the same trip to Egypt, that means when he was in Egypt in exile with his teacher, he already was involving himself in black magic. It's not like he went off the derech and became a heretic or whatever and started worshiping idolatry only after getting insulted by his rabbi and rejected by his rabbi. Meaning, he had already intended on going off. Why did he take the magic back with him from Egypt? Unless it's a different story. And after this incident, he went back to Egypt, took the magic with him. I don't know. That's Jesus, okay? Now, what about the New Testament? Because Jesus didn't write the New Testament, right? And also we have to talk about the Quran, which, by the way, Muhammad did not either write the Quran. Muhammad had Jews around him that he would talk with and whatever. He held in very high esteem, actually. And they were the writers. They knew how to read and write, which he did not. He was illiterate. And Muhammad actually had a group of Jewish sages write his Quran for him, okay? The New Testament, I don't know who wrote the New Testament. I'm not claiming that the rabbis wrote the New Testament. With the Quran, I'm telling you my claim. I'm telling you it as a fact. The rabbis wrote the Quran, okay? Very simple. There was no, hidden agenda. It was very straightforward. Everyone knew. The Jews wrote the Quran. Muhammad didn't write the Quran, okay? With the New Testament, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying the rabbis wrote it. I don't know who wrote it. But regardless of who wrote it, the rabbis definitely influenced Christianity exactly how they wanted it. They had sent in some guy, I forget his name, one of the sages, not some guy, they sent in one of the great sages. He might have been the first pope even. I'm not sure if he was the first pope, or I think so, but they also, they had other people, I think, that they sent in. So I'm saying the early church was also very heavily influenced by the rabbis, not just influenced by our Bible. No, the sages who had control, who were the leading sages of the generation, they wrote the Quran and they influenced what would become written into the New Testament. Okay, so I'm telling you that as a fact. That's what I hold as fact. You could argue today till tomorrow. You could research it. You could see scholars. I don't know if all the scholars agree, but many scholars agree that there was a group of Jewish sages who wrote the Quran. And in terms of the sages sending people into Christianity to influence them and to separate them from Judaism and do all kinds of stuff, maybe Paul himself, I don't know what the names and who's which character, but I think even Paul himself might have been one of these undercover agents, to separate Judaism from Christianity from Judaism, because at the beginning it wasn't a separate religion. The rabbis wanted it to be a separate religion, not for us. Everyone should know it's not ours. It's nothing to do with us. So we have to understand why the rabbis would have done something like this, what the sages had in mind. And I don't know if Christians want to admit this, that the rabbis did this, but from a Jewish perspective, we know this. We have our tradition of what went down. We know what happened. So why would the rabbis, first of all, push Christianity away? Because Christianity came before Islam, right? So let's deal with that first. Why did the rabbis push away Christianity so that it should be its own religion? I mean, you have to ponder that. I'm not telling you I have an answer here, But if I was the rabbis doing that, maybe I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why the rabbis would have wanted done that. You got to ponder about that. I didn't ponder it. It's time to make l'chaim. I think that's what the universe is saying. It's time to make l'chaim. Oh. Carlsberg, probably the best beer in the world. Who would write that on their advertisement? Probably the best beer in the world. Why can't you write it's the best beer in the world? All right. What the rabbis did effectively was create two religions from one, right? Judaism is one religion, Christianity is its own religion. Now, what was their goal that should happen? That this New Testament's going to be published. What should it do? So according to my theory, it's not my theory, I'm not claiming that I invented it. Definitely I'm influenced by Ephraim Palvinov's YouTube series on Islam and Christianity, where he does mention this. The rabbis influencing the Quran and the New Testament. Not just influencing, but actually writing the Quran and influencing the whole Christianity exactly how they wanted it. So according to this theory, that we're building together, or I'm building, or whatever, what did they gain and accomplish? What's going to happen to someone who picks up a New Testament, whether it's in the year 2025 or it's in back then? You pick up a New Testament written in Greek or in English, doesn't matter, or Hebrew even, or Chinese. What's going to happen to the readers? So according to this theory, what they were trying to do was, and which they successfully did, they wrote a book that if someone picks it up and they're coming from paganism, because at that time there was no Islam, there was pretty much, I don't think there was any other religion. Like Mormonism, definitely not, right? Like what other religions were around at that time? I don't know if people were still practicing Zoroastrianism or whatever it's called. Like, what other religions could have been around at that point? At that point, they were mostly just like probably cannibals and like child sacrifice type of people. I'm saying, what was really the competition to Judaism? Hedonism? Like, what was their competition? So people were coming from, for sure, less of awareness of God. People did not have an awareness of this one God. And that's what they accomplished. They accomplished writing a book that someone picking it up that's coming from a pagan world now knows that there's one God. Not only that, they know that there's a concept of a Messiah, which is a very, very important concept. Not just that there's a God, but there's also a Messiah. It's also an important concept. For whatever reason, it was very central and important to Judaism and for the rabbis, okay? So what they accomplished was that anyone can pick up this book and suddenly they know about God, they know about Messiah. Now, what does it mean you know about God? Because I've had this thought for like a second till I realized how dumb it is. Not dumb, but how wrong. Like, dude, because once you know about God, you can't unknow God. Yeah, people are believers and become heretics and that happens. But really, 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 when it gets down to it, every heretic knows that there's a God. You could see even in the Talmud, in the stories, the rabbi said back to Jesus or said back to some character like, hey, return, repent. And the guy said, no, you taught me that for this and this and this, there's no repentance. Which, by the way, I don't know if I really believe there's no repentance. I think they just try to make it harder. But the point is, you could see someone can be worshiping idols and they're a heretic, but they still believe. They're not saying I'm not going to come back and repent because I don't believe in God. They're just saying it's impossible based on what I've done. So there's really no such thing as someone who doesn't believe. Once you have the knowledge of God, you can't unknow God. And knowledge of God can be brought into one's awareness through a book. And that's what they accomplished. Anyone who picks up the New Testament with an open mind, with an openness, will come to know God. And once you know God, you can't take that away from them. Okay? And then they also know this concept of a Messiah, and you can't take that away from them, ever. It's inside of them. It's not a belief, it's a knowledge. Okay? How you can bring about that knowledge through a book beats me, but they did it, okay? They weren't the first ones. God did it first with the Bible. Anyways, so what else did they accomplish? Well, they accomplished through putting in certain divisive tactics, or whatever you want to call it, contradictions, timelines don't match up, concepts that go against the Old Testament, right? They go against the Bible that God gave us, which a new reader is not going to know. Someone who never studied the Bible in depth will not know that the New Testament contradicts the Bible. But a Jew who grew up studying the Bible, can read the language, understands it, can cross-reference things, knows what it's written in there, picks up the New Testament and throws it down. He doesn't take it seriously. He throws it away. He'll flush it. You know what I mean? He's like, even might burn it. I'm saying what they've achieved is a book that has two purposes. One, it takes pagans closer to God and gives them a knowledge of God and a Messiah, and maybe certain morals and the 10 Commandments or 7 laws of Noah. While at the same time, any Jew that picks it up is going to throw it away and won't be influenced by it, which is a great genius to be able to do that, to have a book that's dual purpose. It uplifts those that need to be uplifted and keeps away those who need to be kept away because they're too high for it, right? A Jew to take on the Christian concepts is a downgrade. We're a lot more closer. We have, even look at our knowledge of God. Our knowledge of God is a one God. We don't have a Trinity. A Trinity is very, very, very big downgrade for Jews. We're all about God's oneness. The Christians never were able to mentally comprehend a one God. It's better for them to believe in this three gods than to believe in every pagan type of, concept. At least they gave up on this paganism and they only have the three. Okay. But it's still a big downgrade to a Jew. A Jew cannot have this concept of three. Shituf is called. Okay, partnership. Shituf is idolatry. It's straight idolatry. If a Jew is committing shituf, we'd have to kill him. For a Christian, it's not as bad. They're a Gentile. They're allowed to. We don't kill a Gentile for doing shituf. We kill them for idolatry, I think, but not for shituf, this specific type of idolatry. So I'm saying Jews needed to be protected from the New Testament, and the rabbis successfully did that with their influence by separating the church from the synagogue, by making sure this book contained contradictions in itself, meaning it contradicts itself within the narratives, and it also contradicts the original Torah. They succeeded in giving us a book that brings pagans up and keeps Jews from falling down, okay? And it's a great, genius method. And they did the same thing with the Quran, because the Quran, again, does the same thing. A pagan reads the Quran, he comes to know God, comes to know the concept of a prophet. But a Jew picking up the Quran is gonna reject it immediately and automatically. So that's a great genius. Now I want to tell you what's the real genius. That's not the real genius. As genius as that is to us, the real genius is here. I believe that the contradictions in the Bible, like the New Testament Bible and in the Quran, were meant to be resolved at a later point by people who have the Kabbalah, because the Kabbalah was hidden. Today it's not hidden. Today anyone can access it. So by people who have the Kabbalah and a Kabbalist understanding of metaphor and of different concepts such as reincarnation, okay, and different concepts that only one who studied the Kabbalah would really have a good grasp of, they'd be able to decode and decipher the text. So like, for example, the Quran misplaces certain people. It puts someone, in a time of history where they, according to the Torah, they did not exist. It puts them a few hundred years earlier or later, that type of contradiction. That's easy if you have reincarnation. If you believe in reincarnation, which we do, that's an easy fix. Now, I'm not a Kabbalist. I don't know who's a reincarnation of who, but I'd be very interested for someone who did, because these things are talked about and written down. We have books. I could even do it myself, technically. We could go through the books and see who's who, but we do have books that talk about all the biblical characters and who they were, who they came back as. So like this person and that person, the same soul. They came back as a reincarnation. That we have all over. And that could explain contradictions in the timeline of the Quran very, very simply. And I believe it will. I believe one day we'll be able to open the Quran and read it and not call it heresy. I'm saying as a Jew, and not call it heresy, and see the beautiful truth that the rabbis encoded within. And hopefully the New Testament too will be able to open it up and realize what they encoded in there, Because right now I'm saying as a Jew, the New Testament and the Quran I'd consider to be bad books that need to be burned. Like, no offense to my Christian and Muslim friends, but I'm saying they go against the Torah. They're heresy. Their books are heresy. Now, I'm not telling you that I believe they have to be books of heresy. I'm just saying in our current understanding, in our current way of viewing these books, they're definitely heresy. They're books that contradict the Bible. They will go against the Bible. Their whole mission was to uproot Judaism and the Bible. It was like, here's a new religion, forget the old one, right? Both Muslims and Christians trying to do that. They're both trying to replace the Jews and be Israel. So, I mean, you can deny that, but I don't believe you saying, yeah. Oh, I didn't go to Christian school. Yeah, but you guys did, and I know what you say. So, anyways, you hear what I'm saying? This is a big conspiracy theory, but I don't think I took any leaps of faith, and I don't think no major jumps. I think it's pretty straightforward. The rabbis definitely influenced Islam and Christianity on purpose. And I think they didn't just do it to keep the Jews away. I think they did it in such a genius way that we should be able to decipher and decode, Okay, why does the Talmud say Jesus is burning in poop? Well, I'm saying, why do you take so much offense to it? Because you're offended by poop? You use poop every time you plant. Every time you plant a tree, you plant a seed, you plant fruit, you use poop as fertilizer. So you're only offended by poop, certain types of poop, or certain situations of poop. Poop, we don't make a blessing in front of poop because it is derogatory. But a newborn baby that never tasted wheat is only eating the mother's breast milk, you can bless God and say God's name and pray to God in front of that poop. It has no bad stench. It actually smells like breast milk. It smells sweet, okay? So I'm saying you're offended that the Talmud says Jesus is in poop because you're reading it as an immature person looking to be offended. If you look at it objectively, poop is not derogatory. Poop, again, is used every time you plant, every time you eat, yeah, and your baby's poop is not offensive. Your poop is offensive, so you're getting offended by Jesus being in poop. But that's only because your poop is offensive to you. If your poop wasn't offensive to you because it was the poop of a toddler or an infant or poop of an alpaca that you're using in your farm, you wouldn't be so offended, right? So I'm telling you, you take issue with passages in the Talmud due to your own immature understanding of what's going on here. It might not be so derogatory or derogatory at all what you think. They ask Jesus, what's his punishment? Uncles ask Jesus, what's your punishment? And the response is he's burning in poop. So that is the part that can be maybe offensive to you. Not the part that he's in poop, but the part that he's being punished. Why is our Lord and Savior being punished? Okay, well, again, that's due to your own immature understanding of what happened. Jesus did go off the derech. He rebelled against the sages. He caused others to sin. It doesn't mean he wasn't Messiah. Moshe David Valley clearly writes he was the Messiah, son of Joseph, in his generation, and because of the sins of the people, he doesn't even blame Jesus. He blames the generation. He says because of the sins of the generation, he was given over to the other side. What does that mean he's going to give over to the other side? He's not going to come back? Of course he'll come back. He's a Jew. Everyone comes back. Everyone gets rectified. Only Amalek doesn't. And even Amalek, maybe you could say they do get the rectification at the end of the day. But even if, without going to that point, there's nothing in creation that doesn't hit its rectification besides Amalek. And even that I'm saying is questionable if it's really forever, banished. So I'm saying, of course, Jesus comes back. Why does he have to sit and poop? Why do you put seeds in poop? Why do babies poop? Why do, poop has a function. What's the function of poop? I mean, it's the waste. Generally, poop is like the waste, the excess, right? When you eat food, you take nutrition from it. Whatever you don't find nutritional to yourself in your body, you expel. Which is kind of what the rabbis did. We took all the good that we wanted from this new movement of Jesus and we expelled the rest and formed Christianity. You know what I mean? Like, Jesus is that kind of clarification process that happens in your stomach when you ingest food. Part of it stays, part of it goes out. That's what Jesus did. He's like a purification sifter. These souls are staying here, those souls are going out, forming Christianity, their own new religion. Burning in poop. What does it mean, burning in poop? I don't know, bro. I'm not the Kabbalist. Again, I'm just showing you that from my perspective, where I stand, I'm saying it's very immature of you to find offense of a passage in Talmud that you have no concept of and no clue of. You never read it. And even if you read it right now, I'm telling you, you're only offended by poop because your poop is offensive to you. And you're only offended that he's getting punished because you believe that he's God himself and could do no wrong. I don't believe Jesus is God. I'm saying I believe everything's God. What does that mean? This guy's God, I'm not God? That is already heresy. You can't say that God is anything. You can't say God is anything, right? So when you're going to point to a specific thing and say it's God, again, you're going to say, well, I think I'm divine. Yeah, I think everything takes place in God. God is the location. God is the place. Everything's within God. Everything is constantly being created by God. Is it an extension of God? I don't know. I'm not a Kabbalist. I don't want to say things that could be heresy, but I'm just saying I know enough to know that it's heretical to claim that Jesus is divine and everyone else isn't. That for sure is heresy. If you're going to say everything's divine, I don't know if I could take issue with that. If you're going to say only God's divine, I don't know if I could take issue with that. Probably I would. I would say everything's, I don't know. But for sure, it's anti-Jewish, anti-Bible, and probably technically retarded to try to make a claim that one thing is God and everything else isn't. Say you made an idol. That's what you did. You made an idol. Which, by the way, Jesus, according to the Talmudic narrative, also made an idol. He took a stone, stood it up, and worshipped it so that other people would worship it. So I don't blame Christians necessarily for making an idol out of him. He himself made an idol. Like they're just copying their teacher. But I'm here not to bash Christians or Muslims. I'm here to educate you as my job. I think that's my job as a Jew, to teach the nations, be a light unto the nations. So I'm trying to teach you. I'm trying to bring you back to the biblical way, which I believe I have a pretty good understanding of. Not perfect, but I think I'm definitely more correct than Christians or Muslims, not because I'm Jewish, but because of all that it entails, that I've studied the Talmud, I've studied the Bible, parts of the Talmud, parts of the Bible. And I think I have a pretty good grasp of how the sages work and how to differentiate falsehood from truth, okay? I don't know, let me know what you think. L'chaim, l'chaim. Yo, random thought. Not so random, but animals, for it to be kosher, animals, not fish, animals need split hooves, chew their cud, and also there's no kosher animals, by the way, apparently, that eat other animals, so they're all like eating plants. But like, just think about that for a minute. Like, their hoof is split, so like, what does that mean? Like feminine, masculine, closed masculine, open feminine, like, like a woman's body, you know what I mean? And it's like the part of their foot that covers their foot and it touches the ground, it's touching the minerals and the plant life. The animal, which is the next stage up, his foot has to be open to that. Okay, fine. Not only that, when he eats the mineral or plant life, really plant life at this point, which is coming from the minerals, it has to be processed in his stomach. He has to chew his cud. And only that type of food is food that's kosher for us to eat. And then there's a whole way of slaughter. But what's the point in all that? I don't know what's the point in all that, but I'm just showing you how everything's pretty deep and thought out. It's not random. Oh, he chews his cud, that's a sign. No, chewing your cud, what does that mean? It means properly digesting, properly, processing what's going on. Split hooves, it's not just random sign. No, split hooves, what is split? It represents something, it means something. You could see one is closed, one's open. What does it mean that it's open? What does it mean? I don't know what it means, but it's definitely not random. You feel? L'chaim, l'chaim. Give me a like and a comment if you would.